Hi everyone. Feeling excited and pumped to have Jake from Sport Business Leaders, a great networker. Awesome guy. Jake, just introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm Jake Voorhees from Sports Business Leaders. I'm a sports tech founder and a sports ecosystem builder here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the USA. And very good timing to be recording this because now everybody knows we are Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's a great time to be in the sports business in general in America. Everything is booming, and especially here in Philadelphia. And we have a big event tonight, and I'm just so excited to see what Super Bowl champions and all the attention, and there's more capital flows and interest, and it's very good for the sports economy here in Philly. So yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Really excited.
Thank you, Jake. Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned, right, you won the Super Bowl. And I'm really interested, do you see the money flowing in the Philly right now? And what, future opportunities do you see for companies over there?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the history of the NFL, the first teams to ever play each other was a New York and a New Jersey team, and so here we are at like the epicenter of the origin of American football. And you have some teams, even like the Baltimore Ravens have only been around for a couple decades, or the teams out west, they can't even have enough people to attend the games, and so they move the teams around. But here in
Mm-hmm.
Philly, you have a multi-generational fanhood. You have so many businesses that benefit from the attention and the amount of interest, not only in sports but especially in football. And I think now how it helps to answer your question, if you are a sports tech founder, if you're an early stage
Mm-hmm.
sports entrepreneur or a small business in the Philly area, everyone just knows there's more interest and intrigue around sports in this area. So I do think it is helpful to be an entrepreneur in sports in this area right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, and for everyone to know, Jake has a really, I will say, broad overview of the ecosystem, and he understands something that we don't usually see when we build companies or we listen. So it's great to have, such a guy in the podcast. And I want to talk about your sports business leaders community, why you created, what are the opportunities for startups, investors, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. So I grew up in Maryland, not too far away. I went to school in Delaware, again, not too far away, but I've only lived in Philly. Delaware was a Philadelphia sports area. So even as a college student, 20 years ago, I've been an Eagles fan and a Phillies fan. And I've been in Philadelphia for 4 years. And even though we're talking about it being a big sports town, what Philly also is a big healthcare city. The first hospital in America was Penn, University of Pennsylvania, Penn
Mm-hmm.
Hospital. And so when you go to startup events, venture events, founder events here, it's mostly healthcare, biotech, pharma, life sciences. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not in those industries, it's kind of exhausting because you don't meet people who you really want to talk to. You don't meet founders building in sports. You don't meet investors interested in sports. And so I finally met another person, Justin Tichenel, who was a sports tech founder, and we both had this same problem. We said, why don't we know any people in sports in Philly? And so we did something about it. About 8 months ago, we started a meetup series called Sports Business Leaders. At first, it was just virtual. We did a few of those. They were successful. And then 6 months ago, we started our first in-person event, and only 3 people came. It was a small grassroots
Mm-hmm.
movement where there was just 5 of us, me, Justin, and 3 guests, and just meeting up at a bar to talk about sports founding, sports tech, innovation, that sort of thing. And then we kept at it month by month. It doubled, and now we have an event tonight that will be 200 people. We have people who fly in from different parts of the country, come down from New York. We have Philadelphia local celebrity type people. Charlie Mack will be there, who was Will Smith's
Mm-hmm.
manager, and they call him Mr. Philadelphia. So it's been a lot of fun, and we don't sell tickets. There's no membership. We just connect people and want to help people, and we've created this community for people to really connect, share ideas, and explore collaborations in sports.
Yeah, it's been successful. It's been interesting how you were able to connect everyone. And tell us a little bit about your vision for this project, mission, and why are you even, because one thing is to connect with people, but the other thing is to organize it all, and it's a lot of headache. I understand how hard it
Yeah, it's become a little complex. At first, it was just some people meeting up at the bar, so it was a little simpler in the early days. But the whole reason and the whole purpose was really two things. It was to have sports tech founders meet each other and connect and talk about what they're building and share ideas and offer things that are working for them, and just to be able to connect and learn from each other. And then we also wanted to attract some early stage investors to be there, so that when the time is right, they had a relationship with these founders, and if they needed to raise money, there was already a relationship. And as the organizers of the meetup, we would be at the intersection of that, meaning we would know who the more serious founders were, whose products were generating revenue, who were growing in users, who were gaining partnerships. And I wanted to help out our investor friends by saying, hey, you should really talk to this person, talk to that person. And that was the original goal. And even by the second or third meetup, we had some investors showing up, and that was successful.
Mm-hmm.
But now we get the executives in sports. You have banks who have sports practices. Nike is coming. Deloitte people are coming. And now the sports influencers, the media people who, Jamie, the Philly sports guy.
Mm-hmm.
You have people like Gail Saunders from the Fourth and John podcast with almost 5 episodes talking about a lot of football topics and things like that. And then you have the athletes themselves who are investors and also looking for opportunities and wanting to connect with people. So it started off, to answer your question, as really a place for founders and then investors to connect in sports tech. And now it's like anybody in the Philadelphia sports economy. And we even have events in Princeton, New Jersey. We have an event in Manhattan in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking the meetup and spreading it around.
Okay, so how many, do you have a breakdown of how many startups, investors do you have? What are opportunities for them to, for them while joining you?
Yeah, there's lots of startups. We have like Stephen Say from NextPick, which is a platform that connects tennis athletes to tennis programs. We have Matt
Mm-hmm.
Ray from Lens Sports Group, who's involved with youth baseball tournaments and facilities-enabled tech. We have Zoya from Orgo. We have all different types of founders. These are some of our OGs.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we have investors from New York Angels, New Bounds, EEP Capital, BTIG, Susquehanna Equity Capital. Lots of people who are here just to meet and connect and figure out how to collaborate and do business with each other.
Okay, interesting. Do you know if your community has helped a startup to raise money currently right now?
If we've helped anyone get a check,
Yeah.
we don't have any. I've been making sure there could have been some situations where it's happened. We don't really have any documented ones. We've known of people getting clients and being able to do business and sign contracts with each
Mm-hmm.
other. But that is one metric that our mentors have encouraged us to follow, is that when people actually do write checks and when there's an investor that met a founder at an event and they're able to amplify their business by becoming an investor, yeah, we do want to track that. I don't think it's happened yet. I think we're close.
Awesome. And you mentioned you have mentors for this business. Is someone helping, guiding you? Because you've grown so fast.
Yeah, we have some entrepreneurs who are in and outside of sports who do similar things. They throw community events, they throw pitch events, and we've been encouraged to do things like have an advisory board, and we've been encouraged to just do little things with the events, like how to greet people and to be encouraged to say something to the crowd in order to give them guidance on how to have the best event. So yeah, we've had people show up who want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make it even better. So yes, we have some mentors around.
Awesome. Okay, so since you see this broad picture, you have a community view, you've seen a lot of startups. What is the most important thing in terms of how to start? If you have an idea, right, but you don't have money for it, how do you actually start, check the idea? What is the practical advice would be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Excuse me, there's a lot of things that come to mind. I think the most important thing is to really make sure that you start with a problem. What is the problem that you
Mm-hmm.
find in the ecosystem? And it should be something that you have deep knowledge around. It's something that you as a founder, you should understand, or your co-founder should really have experienced this
Mm-hmm.
problem for years. And you know it's a big problem, and you hear from people, and you have access to people with this problem too. And if you don't start with a problem, this is why any idea could be a good idea. But if you can build a software or build a business that solves this problem that exists in the world, And if it's big enough and there's enough marketplace value in that solution to that problem, then your startup will be successful eventually if you do a lot of other things right. But you really have to make sure you get that problem thing right.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think is very important is you need to build a team. It takes a long time to build a product. It takes a much even longer time, even with a product, to generate a high user count and to generate revenue. But if you can build a team around you, more than just a founding team, right? You need mentors and advisors, and you bring in, maybe some people you give a little bit of equity for like a fractional CFO. But if you can build a team around your idea and you can show later on investors and stakeholders and partners that you've built this squad of 5 to 10 people who are working on this problem, working on solving this problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can show people that, like, hey, look at the people who believe in me, look at my team around me, that's one thing that you can do in the early days. And then the third thing I would say is that I meet so many founders who have a good idea, they have a good problem, they have people around them in the team, but you need to find a way to get an MVP, right? There are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
no code solutions. Maybe you have to bring in a technical co-founder to build a product. Maybe you have to go find an angel to write you a $10,000 or $25,000 check to get some sort of software, but you have to prove that, you have to validate your idea as soon as possible, get an actual MVP of your product and get it out there in the hands of users. I think the book, Eric Ries's, it's called The Lean
Mm-hmm.
Startup, is a really good exemplification of this. You got to, as fast as possible, go validate your idea, make sure that you're on the right track, because you're probably missing something. You probably have something wrong. And the only way to really know that is to get an MVP in front of users and have them tell you what you're missing. And so those are the three things I think. Really make sure you start with a big problem and you understand this problem, build a team around you, and get an MVP out there as soon as possible.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure that a lot of startup founders will find this useful. And then the book you've mentioned from Eric Rice called Lean Startup.
Yeah. Yeah, so Eric Ries, he was an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, and he worked with a lot of startups, and he recognized that many of them had this same problem, that they would do what they call waterfall engineering. They would build and build and build, and they would be afraid that someone would steal their idea, and they were afraid of releasing their product until it was perfect. And this is oftentimes a big mistake, because generally, like mentioned before, you don't have it all right. You're missing something. You actually need to hear from your users and your people who experience the problem every day, deeper than you are as a
Mm-hmm.
startup tech founder. And so he wrote this book called The Lean Startup, and I really think it is like the first book any startup founder should read. It's like the startup Bible, which really hammers out these examples of why you need to make an MVP and get it out there and validate your ideas. And then as soon as you have a tweak or a refinement of your software, do it again, get it out in front of your users again, and create this
Mm-hmm.
community of people who see themselves as early users and beta testers, and what we always call is like founding users, founding families, founding youth athletes, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
that are going to be users of your platform. So yeah, The Lean Startup is a great book. I think everyone on this podcast, if you haven't heard about it yet, go buy it today, go find an ebook, go find a summary of the book. It's very, very good.
Okay, interesting. What are the main characteristics you've seen in people, in successful startup owners? Let's say you see they are crushing it, they're doing really well. And then, on the other side, you see that people that are not doing that well. What are the different things between them?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is kind of what we're talking about is what I really look for is somebody who really understands the problem, somebody who can as quick as possible get it out there. I also see, not to continue to repeat the same three, which is
Mm-hmm.
start with problem, build a team, and then validate as soon as possible. But people who are really out there talking to as many people as possible and emailing insatiably with talking to mentors and investors before they're even ready to take an investment, telling them about the idea and enlisting support. And one of the ways I really think you can do this is sending out a newsletter, a weekly, bi-weekly, maybe even a monthly update to your stakeholders, keeping them involved about what you're doing and what you're building, and keeping them engaged and showing that you're taking their advice and you're listening, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and we're testing this, we're testing that. Other things that I think people should be doing is just always be testing and validating, and what I mean is that, like, not assuming that you have it right and that you want to
Mm-hmm.
explore this, and maybe this is something else we should try, and always being lean and agile and innovative even within your own journey as an innovator. So yeah, these are things I see successful founders do. And then the things that I look for Are user counts? Do you have a growing user count? Are people using your product? And then, of course, you almost want to get it into a revenue testing situation as soon as possible. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's actually very rare that you have the Facebook stories where you can build up a company to 100 million users and not have a revenue model. Because even when Facebook IPO'd, they didn't know how to make money for almost 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and people still thought Facebook was going to fail. So you really got
Mm-hmm.
to build something that people are going to pay for. And that's one of the best ways to validate your technology is that even for $1 a month, $5 a month. This is why these $10 a month membership things are so popular. Is because if you really do have a solution, you know, your Spotify, your whatever, you know, somebody will pay $10 a month for it, and then you can probably figure out other premium ways to deliver value to
Mm-hmm.
those users. But you know, charge your customers as soon as possible to make sure that what you're building is valuable enough to become a actual big business.
That's awesome advices for people listening. Okay, so you've seen a lot of startups, you have a lot of knowledge. My question to you is that what is the coolest startups you've seen? Like, the most unusual ones from top of your head, let's say top three.
Yeah, you have a lot of people building in the youth tech space where there'll be
Mm-hmm.
video stats and highlights or team management. You have a lot of people building in sports betting or what they call the iGaming space.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of people building facilities tech and all these, and these are great. But you have dozens, hundreds of different startups operating in these spaces. The ones that I like the most are the ones where you use the analogy to not be a part of the gold rush.
Yeah,
California gold rush was happening, you had all these people who participated in the gold rush. They
yeah.
rushed to California, and chances were that very few of those people actually struck gold and figured it out how to make a business out of the gold rush. But it was things like I think it was Levi Strauss was the company that sold jeans. The
Mm-hmm.
people that sold the shovels and the picks and the equipment to the gold rushers. And an example I have is a company called Chatta AI. What Chatta
Mm-hmm.
AI is a company that has a white label AI engine solution for sports betting products and other Wall Street and financial management products. But instead of competing with all the sports betting products, what Chatta AI does is it provides a solution so that all of these sports betting products can use their back end white labeled solution. So I look for things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Not just trying to compete with everyone else, but almost serve the booms and serve the gold rushes. Don't gold rush. Don't participate in the gold rush. You're supposed to serve the gold rushers. I really think that. Another example is when Apple and all these other phone companies were making smartphones in the smartphone boom. Now we only have a couple companies that have stood alone. Really, it's just Apple. Even Google can't really compete with Apple. But one of the examples is Otter, OtterBox, Otter, the phone cases. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
trying to compete with all the phones, they just made a case for all the phones. And now I
Mm-hmm.
think Otter dominates. They have about 40% of the phone case market. And there's
Mm-hmm.
not really anything technical. There's no inventing the wheel. It's just a phone case. But they focused on making a very good phone case. They focused on making very robust, underwater, protective phone cases. They got better and better at making phone cases. And they were really one of the only companies that focused on this instead of competing in the gold rush of making another phone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got you. Have you heard a book called Blue Ocean Strategy?
Absolutely.
I think this is the one that you kind of, you are seeing the ideas from there, right? Have you?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great book. Blue Ocean Strategy. The other things, in addition to what you said, because you got it exactly right, it's an example of Blue Ocean. The way that I talk about Blue Ocean Strategy and think about it is that, you know, in the Red Ocean is in the middle where all the biggest schools of fish are, the biggest,
Mm-hmm.
scariest sharks, and that's where all the action is. And we, in business, the analogy is that's the busy, big marketplace. There's lots of money flying around in the red ocean. But then you
Mm-hmm.
go outside of that, outside of the bigger schools of fish, you get outside away from the big scary sharks who you can't compete with them as a small
Mm-hmm.
early startup. And you go out onto the fringes and you find a marketplace that is a red ocean that's working, like sports technology, or we drill into it, maybe like youth sports is the biggest booming market. It's expected to be an $80 billion international marketplace in 5 years, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
go out onto the fringes and you niche down and look at these little tiny solutions, kind of like what NextPick thought what they did. They found a way to help tennis players in American college ecosystems get matched with programs all around the nation. They didn't just try to do a recruiting platform for all sports for
Mm-hmm.
for all ages. It was specifically high caliber tennis players with an agent, so they're good enough to afford and want an agent to work with them. And the platform is to help them get matched with tennis programs all around just the American market with specific roster spots that they had on their teams. So that's a good example of blue ocean strategy. Steven Say is the CEO that I'm friends with. He's a French tennis player who played all around America.
Mm-hmm.
Just what we talked about. He saw this problem. He had friends who were coaches. He had friends who were players, and he knew good players. He knew coaches who had a roster spot who were too busy and didn't have the resources to find these players. So they created nextpick.io to be a marketplace for this. And that's a really good example right there of blue ocean strategy. I'm really glad you brought that up. It's a great example of things that startup founders should be looking at.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so basically 2 books already. We've known Eric Rice, Lean Startup, and then Blue Ocean Strategy. And yeah, you've shared some valuable ideas on how to start and how to get traction. And then I'm interested to hear from your point of view. Obviously, there are a lot of, reports, etc. But what are the key trends you see in sport tech in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think youth sports is the biggest trend, and within youth sports, I think one of the biggest problems is team management. Another blue ocean example, our friend Zoya, the CEO of Orgo, she's very focused on honestly just the logistical, because Orgo stands for organization logistics or logistics, and one of the trends is that a lot of these families and parents, they carpool and they have trouble just keeping all the schedules from Team Snap and League
Mm-hmm.
apps. There's tech to help you know where the games are and know where you need to be and when and what teams are playing when. Think about a busy soccer tournament where you might have
Mm-hmm.
honestly like 5 or 6 games in one tournament with one player, and then maybe you have 2 sons or daughters in that same tournament, or maybe another tournament in another area on the same weekend. So what Orgo does is it just helps with the logistical management. It's like a carpool logistical organizational platform that works on top of Team Snap
Mm-hmm.
with in synergy with Team Snap and other team management apps. So my point is that anything that is helping the various problems in youth sports, data and analytics is another one. You have the VEOs and the huddles, the camera systems that are collecting stats. You even have the player makers, and you have a wearable. So any sort of technology where you can benefit from having all this video and having all these stats around specifically youth players, and figuring out how to deliver value for those players, for those families, for those coaches. There's a big coaching enablement play there. Another very interesting one, still just within youth sports here, because that's the biggest pocket, honestly. There's all these youth teams that play high-profile tournaments with a lot of fans and a lot of people watching them that don't have sponsors on their jerseys. So there's a big opportunity to continue to be a part of that marketplace. I have a friend, Zubin, who sold a technology called League Side to TeamSnap.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it is the engine where if you go into TeamSnap and you look at the sponsor opportunities, that's what they sold them. That's what Zubin and his co-founder sold to TeamSnap. But there's still a lot of opportunity to help out in this marketplace where there's all these youth teams that the families pay a lot of money just to be on the team, but still they run such a lean budget that they don't have enough money to do all the things they want. But then there's brands who want to sponsor those teams, or if they knew about the opportunity, they would. And so there's some opportunity there. So there's a couple of opportunities within youth sports alone. Betting and gaming is a sort of very interesting fan engagement mechanic over the last 8 years since it's been legalized outside of the state of Nevada here in America. So any way to engage your fans, my friend Troy, he runs a project called Food Fight, and they use an in-game currency that isn't actual money, but you buy in, you get either a membership or you buy into the platform and you get these credits. And you can make a wager with your friend if you're watching a football match or you're watching a soccer game. You can say, "Hey, I bet we won't score a touchdown. I bet your team won't score a touchdown right now, or I bet you here in the 85th minute between 80 and 90 they won't score a goal." You can make a wager, and it's this very interesting fan engagement platform that is called Food Fight. GetFoodFight.com. So I think any sort of sports betting or gaming. Another one is Marik from Estonia. I know I have some from friends over there in Europe. He's building a platform called Score Stars, and it's a betting and like fantasy type of platform where you can build a basketball team and you can bet on your team and bet on the players that you've recruited on your fantasy team. So I think sports betting and gaming is a really good application. Facilities enablement is another trend. NIL in America, at least. So that what that is all these college players can benefit on their name, image, and likeness. And if you can build a platform like Jack Adler, he built Out to Win, which is a marketplace to help these athletes find brand deals from sponsors and organizations that want to pay for their name on their jersey or pay for a shout out around their brand on social media. NIL is a big one. Another big one is women in sports. We have more women in sports interest in general from the youth capacity. Flag football is really big in America right now because girls can play with the boys, girls can play alone. You have the Caitlin Clark effect, where now in some capacities there's more people watching women's basketball than men's basketball. You have emerging sports that just focus on, volleyball is insane here in America. LOVB, the League of One Volleyball, raised $100 million, and it's women playing volleyball. So I think these are some really good trends. Youth sports, betting and sports betting, NIL, women in sports, facilities-enabled tech, fan engagement. These are all really, really solid trends to look at in sports tech.
Interesting. Let's say we are talking about youth sports and women's sports, right? And growing up, I've been playing a little bit in the United States, and I have never had, girls. I played hockey, girls who were playing like separately from boys. I've never seen it. Maybe that's I didn't saw it, but usually what happens, the girls are usually training, practicing, and playing with the boys, especially in the youth level. And my question to you is that changing somehow? And what do you see? Do you see like women's completely different structure from men's in you?
Yeah, that's an interesting experience that you have because most of the time, at least in the States, they're very separate. Here's some examples. Like, women, for the most part, they can't play American football. They're not even allowed to play. It's a very physical sport. Obviously, there's a head trauma component. Everyone knows about the CTE challenge right now. And for the most part, women and girls don't play football. Even look at baseball. We've called that sport America's favorite pastime. Women can't even play baseball. They have a separate sport called softball. It's separated. And even you look at the rise of soccer, there's now more youth soccer players than baseball because girls play, but you almost never see the girls playing with the boys. That's part of the reason I really like flag football right now. About 16 months ago, flag football was announced to come back to the Olympics because it used to be in the Olympics in the 1930s. So it's going to see a reemergence about 90 years later. And you do have leagues and games where the girls are playing with the boys because if you eliminate the physicality, if you eliminate the technical component, some of these girls are better than the boys. They're faster, they are more agile, they can move differently. And as long as you can be fast and get separation from whoever's covering you, some of these girls are dusting the boys. You see it. One more example I have, there's a platform, a company called World Long Drive. It's in golf. And it's not about the skills component of golf. It's really about how far can you drive the ball. And you have women who can drive longer than men. It might be weird to think about, but some of these female athletes are really stepping up and really showing these men like, oh, we can do it just as good, if not better than you. And it's an interesting time because I know you might have seen it. Maybe in some youth capacities you have girls playing with the boys, but most of the time we separate it here in the States. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, okay, maybe it was like, 15 years ago when I was there, and it was actually 15 years in 2010, but maybe it has changed. Um,
Yeah. You probably what I would say to that is you probably the girls who you were playing with were probably so good that they wanted to play with the boys, and they probably were just seen as another athlete, and it made sense for them to play with the boys because generally because I had a couple young girls that played with me in my soccer teams as boys, and they were so good that they wanted to be in that, at least what it would be seen like stereotypically a little bit taller, bigger, stronger, faster, just because men, objectively and scientifically have more muscles than women. And it's a way for them to be, slightly more competitive. I mean, it's very similar to if you have a really good football player, soccer, I'm using the word football for you as a European. And I mean, what I mean is soccer, really. Otherwise, I'll say American football. But you see youth soccer players, and what they do is they play up. If they're good enough, they go up. They might even go up 2 levels. And same thing as a girl playing with the boys. If you can find a way, if you're good enough to play with people who are a little older, bigger, faster, really what it helps this youth athlete do is get better, faster for their age. So I think you were just playing with very, very good girl. Was it soccer? Was that your sport that you're?
no, I played ice hockey.
Oh wow! So even same thing. So in the states, you might see it at the youth level, but generally, like at college programs and semi-pro ice hockey programs, you'd have a
Mm-hmm.
whole separate team. You'd have women hockey, but if you could
Mm-hmm.
have a woman play with the men, I mean, it just shows how good that female athlete really is.
Yeah, she was like, and they were like 2 times bigger than I was.
Exactly. So there you go, right there. That's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
All right, yeah, Jake, this was interesting. We've covered a lot of useful topics for sport tech founders. To summarize, we've covered how your sports business community helps people and investors and founders. We've covered some business advices in terms of how to start the practical steps, right? How to find a problem, take a team with you, create a team, launch an MVP. What else? We covered the trends, future trends, and this is a really useful episode for the owners, for the people who are starting out in sports. And because of that, I always ask my guests the last quick blitz questions, and I want to hear from you as well. You ready?
What was the final question? Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you blitz questions.
Okay.
All right. So what is your favorite sport?
So I grew up as a lacrosse player. It's the oldest sport in America. The Native Americans played lacrosse, and I grew up in Maryland, very very big
Hmm.
lacrosse town. So I was lacrosse and a soccer player, but I think lacrosse is my favorite, technically. Yeah.
Okay. Who is your favorite player?
Favorite player, I'll go outside of lacrosse, and my favorite player right now is the rookie Cooper DeJean. He's a safety for the Philadelphia Eagles. The reason I like him is because he went to Iowa. I went to
Hmm.
Wisconsin for grad school, and I watched Iowa come into Madison, Wisconsin, and beat us when we had a very good Rose Bowl year. And I've always had respect for Iowa players. And Coop, for him to come in as a rookie and have the season that he did, have the pick six in the Super Bowl. I really like Cooper DeJean is my favorite athlete right now.
What is your okay? What is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is when I meet people like you and I say, "Hey, who are you? What's your introduction? What's your summary? And then what are you trying to do? And then how can I help?" I really love that's the point of our community sports business leaders. That's the point of our events and our meetups is to figure out what people need, what they're looking for, and chances are, especially with our community scale at this point, chances are I know at least a few people who have that or are doing that.
Hmm.
So my favorite thing to do is to connect people, and people call me a super connector. I love to just make introductions and make connections for people so that they can help each other.
Awesome. Okay, what one advice would you give, like the final advice to the startup owners?
I think that there's a big aspect of perseverance and determination. Building a business, whether
Hmm.
it's any sort of Main Street business or any sort of non-scalable, and even if it's a sports technology or even just a tech business, it's really hard. And a lot of people they go on social media and they only talk about the good days and the wins, but chances are
Hmm.
that you're going to have more tough days and more challenging days, and you're going to get doors slammed in your face. You're going to get no's. You might have team members leave. You might have clients leave, but there's nothing wrong with you. You just have to stick to it. If you feel bad about these losses, there's nothing wrong with, the fact that you have bad days. And there's this thing that I talk about often is that there's no such thing as a business failing. What happens is that a founder gives up. And so
Hmm.
you have to just stick with it. And if you really believe in the thing you're building, if you really are working on a good problem, a big enough problem, and you have built a team and you can be the team that can be the first ones to solve this in a different way, then you'll stick to it long enough to actually figure it out.
Hmm.
So that perseverance and that dedication. There's a book about this called 3 Feet from Gold. Lots of gold rushers who spent all that time going out to
Hmm.
California, they gave up and they left their mine. And then somebody else who was more determined than them showed up and they got to digging and they found gold within a few days. And so you just have to stick to it, persevere, have the determination to not give up. Because again, businesses don't fail, founders walk away from them.
Okay, third book is 3 Feet from Gold.
Yeah, that's another good entrepreneurial book.
All right, yeah, I completely agree on you with that. You don't fail until you stop, right?
Correct. Got exactly right.
Okay, Jake. So everyone listening us can see your energy, and me personally, we've spoken like for 40 minutes, and you've boosted my inner energy. Like before the call, I was sitting like kind of quiet, and then you're just boosted and I want to take action and I want to meet new people. That's awesome. It was awesome to have you, Jake.
Thank you so much. This has been great. I love what you're doing. I think it's wild. You know, you live in a part of the world that is really tough. You know, you're Ukrainian, and I know you're a student, and you're not, a soldier in the war, but you're there right in the war. And I just love that you're able to have this podcast and you're able to deliver value to the world by putting out the content that you're doing. So I thank you for what you're doing and this platform and this opportunity to come on your show. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake. Bye.
Thank you.